Yo, shalom. All praises to the Most High, your Hoshua. This is YYBY. I'm about to give y'all some crazy jewels, man. I think sometimes people don't really understand this far as how important it is when you're dealing with a DAW. And everybody know this. One of the worst things that we hate when we have CPU problems, when we are doing a project or you're doing a project for other people when it's business and you don't want to run into CPU problems. And excuse me, and sometimes what I realize is that you don't want to run into those problems when you're recording vocals. So what I learned is that some DAWs have an input and every DAW have a where you can record vocals, but they don't have an input. And let me break it down to y'all. Like in Studio One have an input. This is the input, right? So that means that whatever plugin you put on this input, when you record to the sequencer, the plugins that's on here, they're not working no more. They're not taking CPU power down here. So whatever you use here is embedded in the vocals. So let's say you're recording 3 artists, a group, and they all want to use the AUTOTUNE. And you're dealing with a software like Bitwig. I know Bitwig do it. Bitwig don't have an input. And this other software that kind of do the same thing. It's a few that do this, where when you're recording vocals and you can't have an input, you can't have an auto tune on the FX or a bus track, and trying to use that same auto tune on each one of these tracks. You literally have to put a auto tune on each track because certain DAWs don't have a input. So that means that when each one of these artists want to use auto tune on their vocals, I don't know why, but they might want to use auto tune on their ad libs. So you might be dealing with 13, 20 tracks with a pro auto tune on each track, and it's gonna clutter. It's gonna take your CPU power before you even get the chance to mix. And now, don't mix vocals. Sometimes we'll make a beat. We'll build a beat round the artist's vocals, and then you're doing something in that moment where you know what, you want to record the vocals in the same file as the music that you made. And when you're making a beat, you got the VST instruments, you got each track, you got VST instruments, so on for taking CPU power, right? So most people will do where they make the beat and then they export it out, and then they bring it in with the wave, blah, 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 blah. Then they record the vocals. That's cool. But you don't have more control that way when you're mixing a song. So it's pros and cons to both. So a lot of the times people want to mix the vocals with the beat, and each track have instrument, right? And these instruments taking CPU power. So if they already taking CPU power, even though you can't bounce them, sometimes you don't want to bounce them because you still want to go back and tweak the VST instrument. Everybody have their different ways. The point is that you want to be free of doing your work and your job without having CPU problems. That's the whole point. You don't want to have to go out your way of changing your flow because of the program or the computer can't handle the CPU. So now, Even if you have a powerful computer, right? Some DAWs you have to record with the plugins on each track, especially an auto tune. In Studio One, you don't have to record with an auto tune on each track. All you have to do is just drop the auto tune right here in the input or whatever plugin that you want to use on the input. Even though you shouldn't use every type of input, I mean every type of plugin, you should only use, a little bit of EQ possibly, a little bit of compression, light compression. I normally use a limiter. That's my whole style. That's another level I'll talk about later. So you're using a small amount to give the vocals an extra umph. But the point is, whatever you're using right here, you can record 99 tracks, and all those 99 tracks won't affect the CPU power because the input, the plugins on the input is embedded on the vocals, compared to if you was in Bitwig, if you was in Bitwig Studio, and some of these other DAWs, which I don't understand why they created this way, man. I don't get it. I won't be able to play this, but let me open up this right quick. Because what I do, I have a template, and my template is the input chain, right? And this input chain right here, I have a tool, I have a little bit of gate and a peak limiter. This is coming in on my input of the vocals. So each one of these tracks has the input chain, right? To affect it a certain way while I'm recording. But the dope thing about Bitwig is that I can still tweak these and affect the sequence of tracks in real time. But the problem that you have is that when I decide to use the auto tune, which is a lot of artists like to use, I can't put this auto tune on the input track. I can, but it won't work right, because if I link this auto tune to each one of these tracks, and let's say I'm recording vocals, and then I put the ad-libs right here, both of these tracks will work this auto tune the same time. And when it works the auto tune the same time, the same auto tune the same time, it would sound horrible and sound dysfunctional, and it don't work in Bitwig. So you literally have to put a auto tune on each one of these tracks. So if you're recording a group or an artist, 3 people, 4 people who like to use an auto tune, you're gonna have problems. You're gonna run into a lot of CPU problems, and that's the difference from using a DAW where they have an input. Because when you have a powerful input, it's like recording with physical equipment through the input. So whatever goes through that physical equipment affects the vocals, and then the vocals land on the sequencer, which is right here, but it don't take no CPU power. So normally that's very important when using auto tune, because really you don't want to put auto tune on every one of these tracks, man. Some people I record, they want auto tune on the lead vocals, they want auto tune on the ad libs. They got their own unique styles. So if you're dealing with a group, you messed up dealing with that type of DAW, because that type of DAW don't have a complete input, if y'all get what I'm saying. And it's only a few type of DAWs like Reaper, Sampler 2, Cubase, Nuendo. I don't know for sure if FL Studio have that. I think they do. Reasons have it. I think Reasons have it. I think so. I'm testing them out. I think Sonar have it. A lot of the DAWs kind of, catching up with it, but Bitwig got to step it up on that part, man, because again, CPU is very important when you're recording music, even when you're making music. And when you can't even make a beat and record the vocals, we're not talking about the mixing process. When you're recording vocals and you decide I want to use auto tune and you're recording probably like 10, 12 tracks of vocals or whatever your creative mind leads you to, and your CPU is already jumping crazy, because guess what? You, no matter what, when you're recording or even when you're making a beat, your sample rate have to be low. It has to be round. You want it the lowest you can get it, 64, block size, or 32 block size, or the furthest you can get it without having a delay in the vocals. So once you can get it low, or you only have a choice to bring it that low, you're gonna have a lot of CPU problems, man. And I noticed that when I'm dealing with Bitwig, you have a lot of CPU problems. So it's hard for me to record artists in it, because when they ask for things like the auto tune, I have to put the auto tune on each track before the mixing process. And you don't want the auto tune on all these tracks, man. Yeah, you can bounce it, but you're going to have problems before you even get to bounce it. That's the whole point. You want to, Bitwig should put an input, a special input like the other DAWs, where whatever you put on that input, it affects the vocals. And the only way you could take it off the vocals, you have to record it over again. If y'all can understand what I'm saying, this is YYBY. Peace.